Our minds are so powerful that what we focus on reverberates through every aspect of our lives. So why not see what happens when we put our attention on all the good things people are doing? Join me for The Good with Teresa G as we start a ripple effect by focusing on all the greatness in the world. I started listening to Keith and Rodney's podcast, More in Common, in 2018. What really stood out to me was the fact that they would have guests on their shows with all sorts of opinions. And regardless of their personal opinions, they always hold a compassionate, respectful space while inspiring spirited yet extremely productive conversations with their guests. Keith and Rodney have the very unique gift of offering their guests and listeners a safe place to have hard but socially enriching conversations. Listening to their podcast has been a breath of fresh air for me over the years, so I'm extremely excited to have both Rodney and Keith here today. Yay!
Yay.
Welcome,
we are
you
excited
guys.
to be here.
That I don't know how to
can we take that intro and put it into our podcast? That was amazing. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Wow.
You're so welcome. I love what you guys really are. So talented in so many ways. And we're just going to sort of delve into that. But first, I want to ask you guys, how did you guys ever meet?
We've known each other for over 18 years. We met at Purdue University. We were neighbors at the Hilltop
Apartments?
student apartments.
Yeah.
And Keith was moving. I think I was already moved in, or I was moving in, and Keith was moving in with his girlfriend at the time. And I did what I do, and I said hello, and found, interestingly enough, some commonality. We like drinking, and
and my girlfriend was 21 at the time.
She was 21,
so,
and I had a moving truck.
Yeah.
Or you had? I don't even know who had it.
No, you had the moving truck. I've thought about it because we told the story so poorly so many times. You did have the moving truck. And I have this vivid memory of like walking out my door as you were walking out your door. And it was just like hey, what's going on? And we went, and I literally do not remember. We got to the liquor store. I remember that.
I actually remember walking around the liquor store. Yeah.
And then I remember leaving. And I don't remember what we did.
No,
it's not like we had started. I don't have a memory of the rest of that other than just hanging out. And
wait, so
the rest was history.
You guys walked out of your front door and then you were like, let's go to the liquor store?
Yeah.
I mean, essentially.
I guess that is, that
college
era.
Yeah. And it was the week before college. It was that whole move-in week before classes started and everything, and before roommates were fully in, so everybody was still moving in.
Yeah.
So what attracted you guys to continue building that relationship?
Wow. I don't know that I've ever thought about that. A couple things about Keith. One, I think on a kind of somewhat of a comedic, but also very true standpoint, Keith is, I don't know if you've ever listened to Dave Chappelle, but Keith is the white dude that always hung out with black dudes in college. There was us and Keith and a couple other white guys that hung out with us, but he was just one of us. And I kind of got that feel. I can conversate with anybody, and I could have that interaction that I had with Keith with anybody. But what continued it is just his personality. And I think what's grown into what we do now is just, even I think, and I'm guessing this happened during our drinking session that night, we probably disagreed on a lot of things, but it was always a respectful thing where it was I'm interested in learning more or talking to you about this again. It was never a, yep, we're done. We see this differently kind of thing.
Yeah. And I would say, so I'm more of an introvert than extrovert, more of an outgoing introvert by definition. And I don't really do well with small talk. Rodney does extremely well with small talk.
That's interesting because I hate small talk.
But you do really well with it. I don't do well with it. I get bored And it's not like I'm bored of the other person, but I want the conversation to go somewhere. And with Rodney, like, I like talking about stuff. I've always liked talking about stuff. And he liked talking about things too. And so we talked about just a lot of stuff. So it just kept, and then, we just liked each other. We hung out. We had common interests. We liked flag football. We, weren't interested in being in fraternities, and we bonded, and then we were able
attending
to
their
go
parties
deeper.
And drinking their alcohol.
Yeah, we definitely liked doing that. And then we just, I mean, for me, it was a big thing. Like we would talk about all things all the time, wherever we were. And it never, like, no matter how we agreed or disagreed, it didn't matter. There was always something to talk about. And we built a really strong foundation of friendship based on that. Even though, heck, I moved to Rochester, New York after college. And then I moved to Chicago. Rodney moved to Chicago for 2 years, then moved to LA. And now I live in Cleveland. So the majority of our friendship has actually not been in the same area.
Truth.
And how did you keep it going all that time? You guys would call and have these conversations?
Yeah.
I mean, there were periods of time where we didn't talk.
Oh, sure. There's those.
Yeah,
but in general, I mean, we're doing the more in common thing now, which has blossomed into several verticals of business and endeavor. But like we've tried to start businesses before, and that's been a thing that's kept us connected. Like I think we both, there's a lot of kindred spirit between us. So like this path of self-realization and self-actualization and becoming the entrepreneurs that we believe we are, like we're both on similar places and come from similar places. And I think that probably, we kind of help each other along. So that's part of it.
I mean, our friendship I talked to Rodney second most to my wife. And I live with my wife. So
yeah, I wanted to say you guys are like, sort of married.
Yeah. No. And I think, there have been a lot of things that brought us back together after I moved to Rochester. But at the end of the day, like our friendship has just always been strong. And that bond there is just, it's, I guess, something we've never talked about before, but it just kind of is. And it's, I feel very fortunate to have it.
Yeah. Everybody should have a friend like this.
Yeah. And the interesting thing to me is that you guys have your relationship is unique in a way that you're saying that even in college, you would have conversations and you wouldn't agree. You didn't necessarily agree with each other. And that would be okay. Because often we as humans like to hang out with people that agree with us, or maybe that's evolved over time. And that's really unique thing about you guys.
Yeah.
I remember working during college. Like I worked at AT&T and Best Buy. Yeah. Like I remember specifically being in the lunchroom at AT&T. We were talking, probably planning the evening's events or the weekend or whatever. And I remember having a conversation about gay marriage in which we both disagreed with each other's viewpoints at the time. Like that was like a random casual conversation for us. Yeah, and I think
it's funny you say that, to interrupt you. I never worked at AT&T or Best Buy, but we would still hang out in the lunchroom. I remember those conversations. I remember those conversations being in the gym, because it was a series of that conversation. But it's funny, I never knew you remembered it from there, because my memory of it is
when we were on the
gym.
Phone. Yeah.
On the phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But I would still go and hang out at Best Buy with him at the kiosk while he was selling cell phones. But yeah, I remember those conversations in the gym.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have them in the gym.
Yeah. That same very conversation. Yeah.
It is unique. I mean, I think it existed in the rest of our friend group to a degree, but we've taken it to another level. So I guess it is unique. And you know what? It is unique. And that's why we are trying to be more public about it and how we have conversations, because we think that more people could do it. It's not that hard, actually.
It's kind of it speaks to one of the fundamental components of why we are doing what we're doing, is like connection between people isn't about the thoughts that individuals have in so many walks of life, in so many ways. And that's the way I grew up. I mean, that's the way I understood connections to be. And that's the way I perceived them all up until, the last 5-6 years, where politics and the information is so much more accessible. All of a sudden, we're judging people by the thoughts that they have rather than the people that they are. And Rodney, our friendship is based on the connection that we have as humans, even if we disagree or have disagreed on some very polarizing issues. And we're able to not anchor on that, because the intent behind the thought isn't to alienate or diminish the other person. I'm sure if I came at Rodney and was like, hey, I don't understand what's wrong with slavery, that might have more of a dividing effect than gay marriage. But it was I think that's kind of the crux of it for us, and what we're trying to expose, right, to other people.
What inspired you guys to start the More in Common movement? Was there political events that happened, or?
Oh yeah.
Colin Kaepernick decided to disrespect the American flag by kneeling. No, that's not my take on it. But the Colin Kaepernick situation happened, and we had a conversation about it, and we disagreed. Imagine that. We disagreed. And we had probably a week or 2 weeks worth of conversations about it, and came to actually an understanding. I think we're largely in the same place, or were at that time, like largely in the same place at the end of those conversations. But that was never the goal of the conversations. But it just started off. Keith hit me up and was like, hey, Colin Kaepernick kneeling at the national anthem. How do you feel about it? And
so I vividly remember every piece of this situation, where I was when I hit him up, the first time I hit him up. So this was before all of the narratives were spun, because, about a year and a half later, like when it first happened, there was, in the sports world, it was a big deal. And then it became a bigger deal after Trump got elected. And it just became just a wildly uncontrolled narrative, regardless of what position you were on. But at the time, it wasn't that. He had sat for the national anthem and then kneeled just a couple of times. And then I saw it on ESPN. And I was standing in my bedroom in Chicago at my house. And I was like, Rodney, I need to talk about this. And he wasn't in a place. He wasn't actually, he knew what was going on, sort of, because he's a Niners fan, but he just wasn't there. And he's like, yeah, let me hit you up later. And so
I remember this. I was walking into a lunch with a client. I had seen that it was reported on ESPN that morning, but I hadn't watched it, and I hadn't really thought about it until you asked me about it.
Right. And my first reaction seeing it was all of the narrative of, how dare you kneel? I'll be honest. I sometimes shame comes into play when I tell this story, but it shouldn't, but it does. But how dare you kneel to the protection of the flag that gives you the opportunity to earn millions of dollars as an athlete? And then I had a lot of that narrative in my initial reaction as a personal matter, before it wasn't shaped by anybody else. And so Rodney and I ended up having an 1.5 hour long conversation, to which he gave me all kinds of amazing perspective. And in that perspective, it shaped the way I saw it. So we talk about coming to the middle on it. I went full to the other end of saying, yeah, okay, he kneels. I understand why he's kneeling now. Rodney gave me some information that helped me process it in a different way. And, that's ultimately how that conversation happened. But it was just a respectful discussion of opinion and thought, and made it an intellectual exercise. And I think that's ultimately the piece of this. And I'm not to ramble, that for us, it's anytime we talk about something, we may be pretty opinionated about it, but we're never in a position such that we're not hearing what the other person has to say, even if it contradicts the way we think.
And I think the last piece, like when we came to the end of this, we said, I said we should start a podcast detailing
That's right.
difficult conversations. It's like we've iterated on what we do, and it's a little different than the original, but people need to know how to do this, and we do it, and we do it naturally. And so let's create a thing that we now know the mission of that thing is to anchor humanity in compassionate conversation. And that was the birth. So
to which I responded, "What's a podcast?" Because I had no idea. This was in 2016. Or, 2016.
I remember that. Yeah.
I have, I love that tagline of anchoring humanity in compassionate conversation. I love that so much. And I wonder can you guys sort of go into what that looks like for you and how it benefits us as humanity?
Yeah. So for me personally, like in my kind of my own personal philosophy and what beliefs, I think that if we insert compassion and I'm starting to say compassion or empathy because people look at them differently. And I think they're both extremely powerful and extremely good. If whichever one you can do, understand, relate to, like if we can insert that into as many situations as possible, I think those situations end up better. To Keith's point about human connection, like it's awesome to be able to understand where somebody's coming from. But even if we can't, if we can just say, man, that's a human and they deserve my best. They deserve the best. They deserve more just for being, not for any other reason. And this is why I personally stick with compassion, because although I'm a bit empathic and I get into people's feelings personally, it's still hard to connect with those. And it's a bit easier for me to just say, they're a person. They deserve more. They deserve better. And doing that, I think will just, it'll make our relationships better. It'll make our dealings better. And it's just a super strong foundation to start from.
Yeah. And for me, it ties directly to the name of the business and the organization, More in Common. We were talking about this earlier today. To my bones, both from a knowledge perspective, whether you're talking the evolution of humankind, like believe that we do all have more in common than different. We may think differently. We may have different experiences, and we may have a lot of variables along the way that diverge away from the core of us as humans. But at the end of the day, we are the same. And it is language. It is communication, whether it's nonverbal, whether it's verbal, whether it's sign language or whatever it may be. That's the way we connect with each other. That is the only way, whether it's in text or in person. We connect through language. We connect through conversation. And if we are able to drive more compassion, as Rodney put it, empathy, compassion, depending on where you fit, what makes or resonates with you most in those variables. But if you introduce some empathy and some compassion towards the other person you're communicating with and you're having a conversation with, you're bound to find the commonalities, even if you are so far different on the surface and experience perspective. Like you're bound to find commonalities as just plain humans. But you asking that question makes me wonder, when you read that, what does it mean for you?
Man, you just did that thing. We do this like twin brain thing. I swear I was about to ask you that question.
You guys, and I knew you guys were going to have questions. So to me, I just take it at a very I've said this on the podcast before. Ever since I became a mom, my approach to people has changed so much because when I'm having a conflict with someone, or we're in like a really intense moment, I always go back to like, this is someone's baby. And all of a sudden, everything is like, for me, it brings it back down to the more in common. Like, this is someone's baby. This is, this someone has a mother. And for some reason, for that helps me bring it back down to the place of, we are on equal grounds. Like right now, we're just having a conflict, but, we are of the same breath. And that's what it reminds me. And before I was a mom, I was much more fiery in my responses. So it's been a gift to become a mom in so many ways, but that's one of the biggest gifts, is that it really is a lot easier for me to locate that more in common with people. And then comes the, finding the commonalities in just the way we're speaking and things like that. But the interesting thing to me about you guys is that you continue to take the conversation. Like, you continue, even when a conversation is uncomfortable and you might not agree, that with your relationships and even in your podcast, you continue the conversation. And a lot of us, I think, are trying to stay out of tough conversations anymore. So if we disagree with someone, we just never bring that topic up again. What's your thoughts about that?
It's what our brains are built to do, to avoid the uncomfortable situations. Like, our brain is built to keep us safe. And so it's human. I think that's why you hear all the platitudes and the sayings around, the growth is in the discomfort, and the win, the lesson, all that kind of stuff. Like, it comes from the discomfort, because you got to go to that place in order to find something new, and to challenge the brain, the ego, whatever it is that's saying, nah, we're good. Like, they don't agree. They're a moron. They're a insert expletive, which I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss, so I won't.
Yeah, you are allowed to cuss. Yep.
I'm the one that cusses between us.
Yeah.
That's my thought, is that our brain's built to protect us and keep us away from
how have you guys haven't, held in those boundaries? Like, what pushes you guys to continue the conversation between yourselves or between your guests?
So this is a really interesting question for me. I fail at this all the time, especially with family. I have family that's on the other side of the spectrum politically from me, or maybe farther, to the others. And like, it doesn't impact our relationship. There are two components of it for me. One is curiosity. If I can be in a conversation, and this is what drives a lot of it for Rodney and I, is just, there's a mutual curiosity to what the other person has to say. So we often, not always, but often feel heard and valued in the discussion. There are times where, you're in that conversation and the curiosity is there. So it allows me to engage in it. And I want to understand what you think or why you think. I have a harder time with family than with non-family, because, family, it's just rooted with all kinds of bias and underlying experiences that drive you to feel a certain way when you're in the discussion. So it just takes, it takes a lot of practice, and it takes a desire to break through that underlying circumstance that's allowing your ego to say your thoughts, opinions, and ideas are more important than what the other person's thoughts, opinions, and ideas are, simply because you devalue them. You think they're dumb. And what I allow that to let me do in those conversations with family is anchor on different points of topic. If politics comes up, it comes up, and I work to navigate that as effectively and as deeply as possible. I try to just navigate the conversation and keep it out of the components that are, if you're talking to a Trump supporter, I want to talk policy and I want to understand what you think about things, not about him, because once he gets mentioned, it completely devolves the conversation. It just becomes it becomes a mutiny almost. And it's like, I don't like him, you like him, whatever the case may be. And then you lose context and you lose connection. So I try to navigate it in that way. So I'm not sticking myself in that place of, yeah, no, we're not going anywhere with this. Like, I just try to anchor on curiosity and try to anchor on the connection between the human versus that specific topic. And if we have to revisit another time, we'll talk about it another time. Maybe now is not the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think so a couple things come to mind, especially from what you said. But one, like if I go bring Rachel down here right now, she'll tell you how I failed yesterday and got really defensive about a comment she made and shut down. Like, I just no helpful response. That is something that happens. And a couple of things I think around that with family. Something you just said, Teresa, about seeing other people as a baby. We had a guest, Kim Cavallo, who said that when she gets really frustrated with her husband, she just sees him as a baby. And then she's like, oh yeah, like, like she just has those warm, loving feelings towards him. And then she can't continue to be mad. And then she can work through whatever. And that, when I remember to do that, is actually extremely helpful for my wife or other family members like my parents. The other thing I think is context. At work, when we're hosting our podcast, like it's almost like putting on a suit or a mask. It's like, all right, this is where I am. So the context is I am that, like, I'm extra forgiving or whatever for conversations. And so it just makes it easier and for me to engage in those situations. But it's not a constant thing. The last piece to this is picking my shots. Like, we don't do interviews every week. We do interviews in certain periods, and then we stop and we have to recharge. Like, Keith is he's more introverted than I am. I toe the line between introvert and extrovert. And the key in it for both of us is recharging. It does take a lot of energy to engage in, even if it's just a good conversation like this. This is a great conversation or talk, and it's like, I'll be drained after this. I will need to go do things to recharge. But when I don't, or if I go get into a heavy conversation with my wife after this, I'm at risk for messing that up terribly.
Keith, what I really, really took away from that is, and I love this, is to focus on not maybe the person in a political sense. Don't focus on the person, but focus on the policies. And I really like that, because often I notice a lot of confliction starting once a person is named. Yeah. Because you have all this like emotional baggage about that person, even though we've really never met the person, but we've created this whole, this whole thing about this person.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it can be good or it can be bad. And then, Rodney, what I really, really take away from that conversation, which I want to say is really advanced in some areas, is that knowing how to set yourself up to have better conversations, whether it's knowing that you need a space after a certain conversation, or for a certain day you need space because it's just one of those days, and just to sort of refill your cup before you approach any more conversations.
Yeah, that self-awareness component plays such a huge role in being able to stretch yourself beyond the comfort zone, and being able to, like I said, I'm not perfect at this, especially when those politically charged conversations come up, because I like politics. I like to pay attention to it, and I get all stuck in my own opinions about it sometimes. And like, understanding that about myself, also understanding, along that line, is how you effectively communicate. This is actually something that's helped, like, take politics out of it, take difficult, like, think relationships and where you have deeper connections. Like, Rodney is better when he has time to write things down and process it.
Yep.
I don't like to write things down. I like to think my way through something, whether it's an opinion. And sometimes when Rodney writes his thoughts down, I read them based on the way I think about them, and it can create conflict, but we understand that about each other so we can navigate through it. So where we often get stuck socially in these difficult discussions is we end it with the conflict. Sometimes the conflict is just the beginning. Mm-hmm. Because what the conflict does is it level sets that something should be, depending on the relationship, right? If it's just a stranger down the street, you might not ever see them again. So you need to wipe your consciousness clear of it. But generally speaking, something should be reconciled here. We are now on a page that we can determine that something needs to happen. So start building, putting your ammo together, put your chest together, figure out what your arguments are going to be in whatever that may be, but enter it looking to receive more information from the other person than you have already built up in your armory. That way we are now in a place where we can have that conversation, and we're working past that conflict rather than ending at the conflict and saying, yeah, hands up, can't do anything with this person. I'm going to move on with my life.
So when you're having a conversation, I take it that you're not, neither one of you, are you, when you're having a conflict, are you going in there to try to change the other person's opinion? Or are you going in there to, like you just said, to collect more information?
It is not my job in any context to change someone's mind. It is my job in every context to understand their opinion, like their data, their information, to provide mine and hopefully be influenced by each other. There's a lot of information out there and none of us know it all. And it's just the reality. None of us know it all. So if I go into a conversation thinking I have all of the data, and then someone, like this happens with my parents often because they listen to different news sources than I do. And sometimes they bring something up that's actually very relevant that I'd never heard of before. So I'll take it and I'll process it and I'll think about it and I'll let it inform my opinion in one way or another, whether it strengthens it or whether it, takes me out of my own opinion. And then in that conversation, I provide data and information that I know, and hopefully that helps inform whatever opinion evolution that they have going forward. But I'm not going to try to change your mind, because if I try to change it, then I'm telling you you're wrong. And thus fight or flight's going to kick in. You're either going to shut down and not talk to me, or you're going to fight and harden your opinions, and it's not going to move the needle on any direction.
I really value that information. I really appreciate that. And so Rodney, what do you think?
Yeah. So ideally, I would not be trying to change people's opinions. Realistically, I am rife with what is that word? Oh yeah, hypocrisy. And in the last year or so, I've really tried to adopt a framework of sharing my point of view instead of kibitzing and telling you what you should do, especially
Thanks,
unsolicited. And mixed result. I think I've done decent. I don't know. I haven't measured it. I try. So and
what
at the same time,
helps you do that?
I'm very pragmatic in general. There's not a lot of things that I actually hold to be absolute truths. So I'm generally actually searching in most conversations, because I don't know the answer, and I'm willing to openly state I don't know the answer. There are moments when emotions get the better of me, and I think I know the answer, or I want to act like I know the answer, and so I'm gonna make that be known. That is something that, so how do I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of blessed and fortunate that I've got people around me that are willing to check me. When I step out of that box and I too strongly state what I actually know or don't know, that helps. but and then my searching, which is interesting. My pragmatism is actually, I think, a great source of annoyance for many people really close to me, because I can play any side of everything, and I do, and it often comes off as like, oh, is he just being contrarian to be contrarian? Which,
yes,
there were points in my life where the answer was yes. Has not been true for some time. Oh, that's the other thing about family history. Like, we think we know how somebody said something based on how they said it the last 10 times or 10 years ago. That's why it's so hard to grow around family or with family.
And now I will say, I will argue tooth and nail that we do have more in common than we don't. So I would go into a conversation trying to change someone's mind there, but that might be the extent of it.
So one thing that really fascinates me about you guys is on your podcast, it's very obvious that you guys are always trying to grow emotionally, spiritually, and often physically. And I wanted to just sort of ask you where that comes from. Where does that focus on developing yourself into better people come from? Does it come from your upbringing? Where does that come from?
Partially, there's this, what is the thing that everybody says on their resume? Like, I'm a learner, or like, I love to learn. I don't remember how it said, but like, there's an aspect of, I actually really enjoy learning, which I think most people actually do when they connect to a method of learning that they like. A lot of it for me is rooted in lack of self-confidence, or has been rooted in that. And it has just driven me to that, plus perfectionism. It's a weird mix. Has driven me to seek more, seek better, whatever the hell that is. Like, which is funny, because like, I was seeking more and better without defining more and better, which was kind of an insane combination of things. Like, looking back at it,
it's hard to define it if you're seeking it, because then you know.
I would have agreed with that. I would say that now, like, success for me is the process of seeking. Like, I think that's winning. I think that's like showing up and seeking is the win. And I leave it at that now. So I think differently on it now. I don't know, Keith.
No, it's funny. You said words I was going to say.
Imagine that.
I'm glad you threw in the lack of self-confidence, because I would agree, in the annals of my lifetime, that has actually held me back. But underlying that, I've only learned recently in talking to my therapist, like, I am a perfectionist, and in being a perfectionist and not having confidence, it's like, okay, if you're not going to be perfect, then don't do it. But I've had big moments in my life that have propelled me in a direction that moved me forward, and then it flattens out. Over the last few years, especially since we started this, that perfectionism to be the best version of myself every day, and feeling confident that I'm working towards that, my whole psychological framework on this has changed and evolved over time through a lot of work, quite honestly. Like, it didn't just happen, but over the last couple of years. So it's like, each and every day, it's just, these are the things I want to be. This is what I want to be. This is what I see myself as. And so, I have a personal philosophy. It's anchor on the right thing. It's been like that since before Frozen 2, do the next right thing. But
you stole it. You stole it from Anna, bro. Come on.
Just had to let us know, huh?
I hear it all the time now, and it's like, you're stealing it. But like, anchor on the right thing. Like, just be the person you know yourself to be, and I'll fail. I don't let that affect me nearly as much. So I think the perfectionism and desire to be the vision of this myself that I want to be just keeps me driving to be better at whatever it is, and be better at this thing that we're doing. And it ultimately allows me to see when I'm not being better, and especially at home, where I think I fail most often. constantly striving. It's just that I think that's what it ultimately comes down to for me as well.
I got to add a couple of things. One, shame has been a big component of it for me. Been a lot of, there's been a fair amount of just like big fuck ups in my life that have just like, and even little ones where I just felt like I was not deserving of anything good or better. And I was just not only did I fuck up, but I was a fuck up. And so I had to work my way back into the good graces of whatever, like including myself. And so that's been a huge driver. And I would say a negative driver. Like it's, I guess, had some positive outcomes, but it's not I don't think the best way to go about it. I will also add that having children has been extremely accelerating for me on the process, because what I don't want is like the stuff that I realize now, like the shame and this lack of self-confidence. Like I don't want that stuff to grow on them, and I want them to excel like anybody with children does. And so like doing the work and doing more work and striving to be better so that they can see it and then they can be better is a big thing. And then the last thing is how wildly uncomfortable it is for me to talk about myself. This is probably the third podcast interview, like conversation interview we've done. It's so like I'm doodling and I am fidgeting.
Are you sweating?
My palms are a little moist. Yeah. And I want to ask you so many questions because I would rather.
God, I have so many questions. Yeah.
I would rather deflect back onto you so you could talk than me talk, which is partially probably why I'm really good at connecting with people, because I can pull out all kinds of things. So,
and I'm an only child, so I'm really good at talking about myself. But I have to also add that the children component of things. I mean, you alluded to it earlier, Teresa. Like it's game changing. I mean, when you think about our origin story as a podcast, Rodney asked me this in September, October. Do you want to start a podcast? Sure, cool, sounds good. Had my firstborn that December, Rodney came back and asked me about it, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm game. Like, let's go, let's do it." The inspiration to be the best version of me, whatever that looks like on any given day, is fueled so much by being an example to my kids so they don't have to figure it out when they're 37.
Watching your videos on Instagram, you guys have some great videos. And then in your podcasts and just watching you guys over the years, it's always just really, you guys have like a little soft spot in my heart, because you guys are continuously working and thriving to do better and to really understand yourselves. And I just want to applaud you guys, because that's not so common, I mean, maybe it's with the people, most of the people I know are doing that. But when I start interacting with people out there or observing, that's not, the road everyone's taking. So, and I honestly believe healing yourselves is healing the rest of us and healing the planet, because it's like a ripple effect. So I really want to applaud you guys for that.
Well, thank you.
Because it
Thank
comes across very clearly in everything that you guys send out into the world. So I appreciate that and I applaud that.
That means a lot.
You.
Really
that
appreciate
a whole
that.
Lot.
I wanted to talk to you guys a little. I wanted you to talk to my listeners and sort of tell us a few key steps for how you've been telling us this whole interview. But is there certain things that you would suggest that maybe they can just start thinking about as they navigate tough conversations?
Here's the fun part about our, we do have this podcast. It's an amazing podcast, and people really get to see us put into practice the things that we try to teach, as we have a corporate consulting practice as well. The intent behind our content is really something that we've really realized over time is there is we do a lot of research, and we try to read up on all this stuff as well. So we can learn from others and a lot of what other people are doing, like Brene Brown, Dolly Chugh, our man Graham Bodie out of the University of Mississippi and listening.
Don't forget Michael Gervais.
And Dr. Michael Gervais. Gotta love him. But Simon Sinek, man, keep throwing them out there.
We could just keep going.
I'm like writing some of these down. I've never heard of some of these.
The thing that we really came to realize, like in all of this amazing work that exists with how to listen better or how to navigate a conversation or how to connect or, be more empathetic. Like there's so much great work out there. What we really realized is our sweet spot, what we're really good at, and what we really see as missing in the education of it all is the space. Ensuring that when someone enters your space and you're about to have a conversation, that even if you're tense and you're feeling like, I don't know how this is going to play out, you still feel safe enough to engage. That both parties are creating that space so that all of those tools become easier to use. And, we've built out an approach, we call it the MORE approach to creating a safe space. Didn't think we would be talking about this, but I'm really glad you asked because, we like it. But really it comes down to, meeting people where they are, knowing that people come from different backgrounds, different experiences, different worldviews, being open to listen more. And really just opening yourself up to hear, to listen without talking, without interrupting. I'll pause and let Rodney finish it.
R, so MOR, remove intent. So, really, I think the first way Keith and I both heard it was assume positive intent. And it's a very noble and an amazing goal. It's very difficult for me personally to assume positive intent when I feel slighted or wronged. And it's a little bit easier for me to get to just wondering, which gets into E, which is embrace curiosity. And if you can be in a space and just wonder what the person across from you or the people across from you are, who they are, what they said is actually meaning versus telling a story and saying, without asking them. So that's the process, the MORE process. That is literally what we teach for creating that safe space, creating a safe space. And a big part of it, which would be, I think, what started me on this whole journey 5-6 years ago, would be breathing. I would recommend everybody invest time in learning to breathe, like a full, deep belly breath, learning how to hold it and inhale, exhaling slower. It just physiologically, it does so many things for you. Mentally, it does so many things. And it's helped me in this conversation as I've had my nerves. It's helped me with difficult conversations with my wife, with work, with breathing and it's free. Like we can all do it. It's an innate gift that it turns out most of us hyperventilate most of the time. We take these shallow breaths and we put ourselves in these physiologically heightened states. That's something that I would highly recommend people look into or think about.
Yeah, I think, the last thing I'll say on it, and the reason we've narrowed it and we've come up with this is we look to anchor on things that you as an individual can do without concern for what the other person is going to say or do, right? Like conversation tips, how to respond, questions to ask. These are all amazing things that exist out there. Listening is one of the hardest ones. And that is, one that there's a ton of information out there on ways you can listen more. And one basic way is just set a timer and don't say anything and listen to whatever the other person has to say. At the end of the day, these are things that, like, meeting people where they are, that's you. That's on you as an individual. It doesn't matter what the other person says in that case. Like, it's up to you psychologically to work through and navigate through and be aware of yourself emotionally. Removing intent, same thing. Telling yourself to remember to listen, open to listen more. and engaging with curiosity. Like these are all things for you to create space for the other person to then feel comfortable. So when it comes time to respond, to react, to have that further conversation, they feel more comfortable listening to you, hearing you, and ultimately engaging with you. And it's a back and forth. And it can break down real easy, but we all got to give it a little effort.
That's pretty powerful. So, I love that you're just giving us things we can work on with ourselves. So,
right.
We're independent of the other person. And the breathing thing, just you saying breathe more made me feel better. I should remember to
Reminded
breathe.
me too, yeah.
Like that feels so good. So everyone who comes on the show, I ask them a question, and it is, what do you guys do every single day to support your best self?
I journal. Thank you, Rodney, for the tip. And it's hard for me to even say every single day. There are 3 things for me. I journal. I exercise. I exercise 6 days a week. And I drink water. First thing in the morning, especially. If I don't exercise and it's on any given day other than the off day, I'm miserable. If I don't drink my water first thing in the morning and just as much as I can, I'm miserable. And if I don't journal, my headspace is totally off because I do a few things in my journal to kind of level set, ground myself, and to list out the things that I need to accomplish for the day. So it allows me to know what I'm going into and just get after it. Those would be the 3 things that I do every day to try and bring my best self.
Yeah, mine's changed a little bit with kids. Like I can't put it in my journal every day, but there's a couple of things I do. I either write down or I have a conversation with myself about my intent for the day. It's usually something like based on me, like how do I need to show up, or how do I want to show up in the day? Then gratitude. I do gratitude a couple times a day. I do it in the morning with myself, and then either throughout the day or at dinner with my family. And then I map out I'm really bad, even with my calendar, I'm really bad at tracking events. And so I just have to write them out in my journal so I know like what meetings are coming up. And then the next piece of that is writing down what I'm going to do to take care of my body, my being, my overall balance, and my business throughout the day. And it could be just like balance could be as simple as giving my wife a massage or stretching, reading. I don't know, like it doesn't have to be complicated, but those are the things that I do. And then I guess I didn't even think about it. Like I wake up and drink 48 ounces of water. The water is just the first thing I do. And like that right there, the water thing, that I've been doing that for, I don't know, 8-9 years. Like that I stopped drinking coffee for a year because that was enough. Just drinking some cool water in the morning. But yeah, those are the things. It's a good question.
Well, you guys,
I like that question.
That is awesome and perfect because I need to start drinking more water. That's what I got out for. That's what I'll take personally from that. Because I was actually thinking that this morning. I need to drink more water. So I wanted to finish this conversation with a quote that I found on the More in Common Pod website that really spoke to me. And it is, Keith wrote this: "People deserve to be heard. People deserve to be understood. We shouldn't fear judgment, as we all have a journey littered with mistakes. While we don't always agree, we can at least make an effort to find out why." Something to think about as we go about our conversations for this week. And as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, Keith and Rodney, for joining us. And
thank you, Teresa. This was awesome.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the time.
So thankful. And to all of you guys, thank you so much for your continuous support. I appreciate it so much. And I will talk to you guys all soon. Thank you. I'm Teresa Gabrielle, and you've been listening to The Good with Teresa G. You can follow The Good with Teresa G on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you haven't yet, go to the Apple Podcast and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another inspiring conversation. Thank you for listening.